Now, The Mirror and the Light starts off with, what's her name? Anne Boleyn getting beheaded. And that's not a spoiler, because it's on the first page, and it's in the history books too, I think. Now, even though I'm from the United States, I have cable television, I have Netflix, and I have YouTube. And I'm pretty sure that I've seen Anne Boleyn get her head chopped off several times. I think British actresses seem to yearn to play royal historical figures who get beheaded. And I think it's just a dramatic thing. Americans like reading British novels because when I say that, this I mean the books, because the books don't need to be translated. And there is some British slang that's different, but we Americans can usually figure that out. It's stuff like French and Russian books, and I guess books from most other countries too, because I don't want to leave anybody out. All those other books are okay, except they're written in other languages and have to be translated. Translations, they usually get messed up, so I guess I'm probably not the only person, but I and other people from the United States prefer reading British novels. Now, British historical novels are great because they don't have the crazy slang, and members of British royalty are always getting their heads chopped off. And that's one thing that we don't do in the United States. We have our death penalty, we have our high murder rates, but we don't publicly decapitate our political prisoners. When reading English historical fiction, it helps to not be knowledgeable about British history. Most of my English history comes from the movies Braveheart and The Patriot, Bernard Cornwell books, Princess Di documentaries that my wife watches. Looking back, I think Meghan Markle, as much as she complains, she's probably lucky she's still alive, but it's still early. Now, the bad news is that I'm ignorant about British history. The good news is that the stories in British historical fiction will be fresh if I continue reading. All right, anyway, The Mirror and the Light, it's the third book of a trilogy, and it's probably a pretty good trilogy because the first two books were bestsellers and they won a bunch of awards. Now that the third book is completed, I can safely read the first two books because I don't read trilogies until they're finished, because I hate reading a book and then having to wait years for the next book. Now I can read the entire trilogy, but the question is, should I? Well, let's start with the first page of The Mirror and the Light. Once the queen's head is severed, he walks away. A sharp pang of appetite reminds him that it is time for a second breakfast or perhaps an early dinner. The morning circumstances are new and there are no rules to guide us. The witnesses who have knelt for the passing of the soul stand up and put on their hats. Under the hats, their faces are stunned. Not the present tense. Now, come on. This scene specifically takes place in May of 1536. This scene is time specific. Present tense works best, in my opinion, when the scene or the story revolves around a human experience that is not time specific. Now, to me, this is a misuse of the present tense, but that might just be me. So as an experiment, I rewrote that first paragraph and then put it in the past tense just to see what it looks and sounds like. Here we go. Once the queen's head was severed, he walked away. A sharp pang of appetite reminded him that it was time for a second breakfast or perhaps an early dinner. The morning circumstances were new and there were no rules to guide them. The witnesses who had knelt for the passing of the soul stood up and put on their hats. Under the hats, their faces were stunned. I don't know. Does the tense change matter that much? Maybe the present tense does make things sound more urgent or dramatic, but I don't know, it's still the principle that bothers me. Maybe I'm just a tense snob. Now I might still read this trilogy. It's finished, and I'm unfamiliar enough with the time period for the story to be fresh, but it's written in the present tense. It's a story from the 16th century written in the present tense, and I don't think I can read 3 books of a 16th century story written in the present tense. Again, that's just me, but what do you think? Should present tense be used in writing historical fiction that takes place in the 16th century or the 17th century or the 15th century or how many centuries back BC? Will you read books in a trilogy before the trilogy is completed? Let me know. Or if you have any other questions that you want to answer or questions you even want to ask, put them in the comments below. And if you like book reviews and book discussions and book talks and I messed that one up. Check out my blog, dysfunctionalliteracy.com.